Good evening, and welcome to October 24th, 1980. I'm going to be reading a portion of a story I've been working on. The scene, a flourishing rainforest. You have to picture this. Bright rays of sunshine are filtering through a thick mesh of trees and vines. Exotic bird chirping noises produce a melody line under which can be heard contrapuntal love calls from happy animals to each other. A rustle of leaves, a crackle of twigs, and before us stands a giant ape. He is deep dark brown and well proportioned for his size, which is large. He looks about with wonder at this moist world teeming with life. Then he turns to us and speaks. What has brought us to this? The languorous quality of his voice calls to mind John Huston. I don't have any definitive answer, though I do have much to relate on the topic. He's going to speak for a while now. It's going to get a little confusing. I'm not entirely pleased with it, but the essence of what this ape says by way of introduction seems important to me. While I don't have any definitive answer, though I do have much to relate on the topic, let me first say my own understanding of the world is based on a deep faith and trust in nature, and I accept with open arms all that has arisen in nature. I accept that I am simply here, and since I am a creature of a certain size and speed, this here being the place where I am is my world. It is the ever-changing space which I presently being the ever-changing time, displace. It is a world expanded in time by all I can perceive with my five senses, whether through direct examination or peripherally. And it is filtered in varying degrees by what I call the aura of my mind during perception. What I call the filter of my mind during the perception. This aura, this state of mind, being induced by both present and prior perceptions, which have gone on to create me and turn me into the person that I am. Combination of my genes and my tabula rasa, I guess. I'm also aware, he is also indeed aware of the tragic fate that awaits us all. At any one moment or another, my being here will be altered most drastically, while I will still go on displacing space. My powers to make he'll be displacing Earth, probably. My powers to make this world, my world, completely disappear with my ability to recognize time and space. I refuse to be plagued further by such considerations. Rather, I remain satisfied and content. Perception is still in my power, and if I link it with some past perceptions, I can say, looking around me, that, yes, I think it must have rained quite a lot to have produced such vegetation as this, as a rainforest, a flourishing rainforest that the scene was introduced as a few lines ago. Yes, it must have rained quite a lot to have produced such vegetation as this which surrounds me. However, and in keeping with context of this story, which is still to come, I am a chosen ape, for through me there shall begin a series of numbered pages that another being, considered human by beings who occupy space and who have the ability to name that which they have discovered nameable, and who also, by the way, consider themselves human. This being, which I shall also call human, has decided, though this decision, I think, activates an outcome far beyond his initial considerations, to write a story, and to begin it in this way. He's no longer exactly like John Huston, but I'm sure John Huston would do his own bits of business as well. The way it has already begun, this story. This human being is a male, so I will refer to it with the smoother pronoun he, rather than it being such a disruptive and unpleasant-sounding word for the more tender ears. He, yes, I will refer to it. As he writes, being that he was writing just a little while ago, he exists in ever-changing time and space, and he is conscious of this. he is assembling pages of words that are all over the place here. And they will afterwards exist in time and space, but they will not be conscious the way he is when he writes them. This book is an item, a product that will be here for other beings with that conscious power to perceive time and space, who have the ability and desire to experience this material that attempts to recreate an attempt by the writer to put his perceptions into focus. So it's a product. Excuse me. I just want to take out a few moments to put in a few words for the Fuji cartridge, video cassette. This is also a product. It's barely larger than a paperback book, and it weighs about the same amount. However, a brief homage to it never hurt, and in fact, I am completely indebted to it just as a mere sizable concept. I'm very impressed by it. Anyway, so this is another product in a way, just as the written words and the end resulting book are a final product. Well, as for the ape, he doesn't get much out of this. He doesn't get much out of any of this stuff. Oh, jeez, it must have given the mic something to think about. Yes, as far as I'm concerned, this is premeditated fooling around. Not entirely premeditated, but he could go out of his little study here and maybe relate to the world in a more direct way. But I've begun to extempore from what has been written here. As far as I'm concerned, this premeditated fooling around. He could go out and relate to his world in a more direct way, but he is determined to redirect his energies. They can't get out in this more direct manner, so he has to build another channel. He almost has to build a canal through which these energies can escape, or at least can be relieved. For him, it's something of a relief. For me, I suppose it's something of a relief. I'm talking about myself in the third person is much easier because I don't have to commit myself to speak for myself. I should know what I'm talking about. For the sake of an alteration of his consciousness and existence. He's writing this book for the sake of an alteration of his consciousness and existence. This is his intent. You see, when I'm finished with this book, I'm assuming that it will then lead me on to other things, and it will be as though certain portion of my life, certain aspects of my life, if not my entire personality, can be left behind for something new and different, and who knows, maybe more optimistic, maybe more pessimistic. Hopefully, I mean, I'm assuming I'm living forever under this circumstance, like I'm going to have all these personalities to look forward to and all these different consciousnesses and existences, but who can say that is perhaps the intent? There was a little arrow that pointed to those words. This is his preference, the writer's. I think it is self-forced, and I also find it hard to appreciate. However, the opportunity has come to me this once, and I doubt it will come my way again. Well, as it is part of my philosophy not to be averse to any aspect of life, I accept my role as storyteller. It is easy for me, anyway, because this story comes to me in a recurring vision. All I'm doing is describing to you what I've seen on the Steinbeck again and again. This wondrous rainforest fades now. Good, we're on to what may be some action. The surroundings are bland and flat, and the sky is bone-colored. We are on the extreme outskirts of a great city, which can be seen as a jagged mound in the distance, surrounded by a greenish-purple halo. That is its atmosphere, its own self-created atmosphere. Seated on a stoop, yes, the ecologists among us will perhaps object to it, but it's what has been created and what we, I suppose, must accept to some extent. Seated on a stoop in front of a dullish silver metallic screen door are two human beings, one male, one female. Right now they are no one in particular, but they'll each become someone as the story progresses and more words are said about them. For one thing, they have no car, and they have only been driven so close to their inevitable destination. Tired and dissatisfied, they wait for another ride, not knowing from whom it will come. They have drab feelings, which are intensified by a change in the noon weather. It is becoming chilled and is turning very gray. These two human beings have reached the point in their lives where they can do some arbitrary vacationing while loosely searching for such nebulous attainments as fame and fortune. They are staring into space, a space which is disturbed by a car by a car. Yes, it halts in front of them and honks. "Hey, how about some gas?" yells its driver as though he was saying one word with many syllables. The screen door opens and an attendant walks out, stepping over the tired couple, whose faces have lit with apprehension and some small hope. "Okay, mister, hold your horses." The attendant walks to the driver's window and leans on the car. "Fill it up at the regular," comes the no pause as a request. The attendant snaps his fingers and approaches the back of the car. The driver says, "Wait, you need a key." Sounds of keys landing on asphalt. The pump meter spins. The attendant whistles. He gives the bug-smeared windshield a spray. "Nice car you got here. Is it as old as it looks?" "Older. 15 years old." "Older, really? Beautiful condition." "I like it." The driver feels friendly toward the attendant. He has been standing by his car, stretching his legs. He leans on the car and unfolds a map. Say, is this the road to Dealadon?" he asks for the sake of conversation as he examines the map. "Certainly is. Open the hood. You heading that way?" Driver reaches under the dashboard. He's calmed down a bit also. "Yep, first time, too. I have some relatives there. Cousins, you know, married folks. They've been writing me for years, telling me to visit. See the shows, the exhibits. I have some free time, a lull in business. Thought it was a good opportunity to broaden my horizons. See the city of Dealadon firsthand rather than in the papers or on the television and in the movies." The attendant is examining the oil on the dipstick. He doesn't feel like putting oil in the car, having recently washed his hands. "Don't be fooled by all that media stuff. See for yourself, that's what I always say. You'll find it's just like any other place." Then he remembers the couple sitting on the stoop. "So you're heading for Dealadon, eh?" He appropriately lowers his voice. "How about taking on 2 passengers? Those poor folks over there want to visit Dealadon as much as you do." "Well, I suppose." The driver glances in the couple's direction. Marie, the attentive one, nervously waves her hand. Marie, the woman, the female of the group. I suppose, ... I could. Oh, you're a real Samaritan." Pat on the back. Calls out, "Hey, folks, you got a ride." Marie and then Philip rise. Marie begins expressing thanks to the 2 men, shaking their hands and bowing her head slightly. "How do you do? My name is Marie. This is my husband, Philip." She does not actually at any instant make eye contact with either of the 2 men. Philip hops into the back of the car as the 2 men observe with some slight perplexity. Marie gathers their knapsack and follows Philip. As the driver pays the bill, he asks, "Where would you like me to drop them off?" With a newfound tone of freedom, the attendant replies, "Hey, listen, buddy, I don't care, wherever you like." The driver looks suspiciously at the attendant, then at the 2 strangers seated in the back seat of his old Benz. They are staring into space again. The driver takes a good look at them for the first time. He is struck by their petite, sharp features and their extremely olive complexion. They have tight mouths and rigid, penetrating eyes. They are very still, except for an occasional quick, nervous movement betraying their tension and impatience. What type of people are they? Where did they come from? They have tight necks, too. Why wasn't he more cautious about his passage? As these questions and observations run through his mind, the driver gets into the car. The door slams. The motor comes to life with a purr. At a stationary position parallel to the dirty silver rear hubcap, we see the car drive off onto the long, straight road that leads to Dealadon. Inside the car, 3 heads bob from side to side. The gas attendant looks to his Sunoco sign with a sigh of relief. As he heads back into his office, he muses on the fate of Philip and Marie. See this word for a moment plastered in black across the gray sky, then we'll move on as well. Completely unaffected. Okay, it's called Storm Cloud. We'll be entering the city by air. Some rooftops are very pointing. Few are slanted. Some are very flat. They are stuck, wedged, or rammed into the thick, gaseous atmosphere at one height or another. Liquid encircles the city in varying degrees, from 2 to several thousand miles distance from the next shore. Bridges are strung across the lesser distances. There are other strings extended over the water from land to land. There are a variety of flying vessels buzzing or swooshing by. Helicopters are landing on some of the flat roofs. Some roofs have gardens. Most are covered with velvety black tar. At this height can be seen three places of interest. The Belladon Theater to the left, the Maxwell House University complex to the extreme right, and in the center there is the Clairol Hotel. There is a large patch of green in between the Clairol and the Maxwell House University. That giant reference to nature is flourishing amidst the great rock sculpture that is the man-made city of Diladon. Affa Park, the Park of the Apes. We sink into the city. We see there are large boxes, cylinders on the flat roofs. Each one has an antenna. Buildings are built of bricks of various shapes, sizes, and colors. There's brave metal and steel construction, glass construction. Some buildings are all glass. Inside is some office excitement, as people are occupied by the decision-making process. There are some desolate offices. There is nothing so desolate. Some drawn curtains, some one-way mirror windows. Whether you look in from the outside or out from the inside, you are always looking out. They offer a view of what's looking at them. Some shining silvery blinds. It's the Venetian blinds, but silvery, shiny, keep it more modern. The ground is teeming with cars and people. Shapes vary slightly but endlessly. There's lots of Mercedes, but only that old beige one contains the three folks we left and will rejoin now. Traffic has been terrible, and the driver is very emotional. He contrasts his violent driving with calm, innocuous conversation. The city itself has excited him not nearly so much as the city traffic. Philip is certainly not lacking in excitement purely over their arrival. His eyes are blazing with wonder as they scan at the gray city from the different angles available to him from the side window. He looks high, low, perpendicularly. He concentrates entirely on his new surroundings, ignoring as best he can both the driver and Marie. Marie listens politely and attentively to what the driver has to say. She figures it is the least she can do. She does not herself know how to drive, so she is not on the edge of her seat. Also, she is sitting in the back. A social blunder that reduces the driver to little more than a taxi driver. He thought about why they would want to sit in the back together. He figures they can't stand being too far from each other for too long a period of time. Driver talks. The driver, this is conversation that's been going on. Things had gotten so bad that land was the only thing I had faith in. I bought some acres way up north. Beautiful virginal ground. It was going to be my own private haven where I'd build my own house with my own two hands. My own piece of the world. Seemed like a great investment. Oh, really? What happened? The government is turning the area into a national park. Oh, well. Oh, well. She doesn't quite understand how that affects him. I take the good with the bad. That's good. Why, the way my business is going, I'll be rich soon, and then, he gives a carefree shrug. Who cares? Do you have business here in Diladon? Marie asks with some haste. She had a question and she wanted to use it right away before it had become dated. Me? No. Don't expect to, though you never can tell in my line of business. You see, I'm a promoter. Marie, at the payphone, what the hell is it? It's just, next page, some other material comes a little later. Ooh, a promoter. Marie tries to think of what a promoter does. Yep, a promoter. That's what keeps me occupied out west. A lot of songs you hear on the radio are on thanks to me. But of course, Marie cuts him off. Ooh, that's really nice of you. I like a lot of the songs on the radio. She says with no punctuation whatsoever. I'm not reading this problem. Alright, the end of the music. This is good. Grand Wazoo. Ooh, a promoter. Marie tries to think of what a promoter does. Yep, a promoter. That's what keeps me occupied out west. A lot of the songs you hear on the radio, I'm the one who's responsible. Oh, that's great. I love the songs on the radio, some of them. Marie cuts him off. Yes. Oh, that's really nice. Yeah. So she's impressed because he's. I hope this is clear that he's the one who's driving and he's the one who's doing the talking about the Alaska and the promoting. Um, Philip likes those songs also, don't you, Philip? Huh? That's Philip who says, huh? Yeah, continues the driver on a different train of thought. He has become comfortable with his passengers during the time he has spent with them. And how many he's already spent. He has assured himself that they are sitting in the back not because they want to murder him from behind, but because they want to be together. As he speaks, he thinks, why, they're just harmless kids. He wonders how much they know about sex. Then he remembers Marie saying they were married. He wonders all the more. He balances Marie's question with one of his own, indirectly related to his thoughts. Say, where are you from? We're from the country. New Latex. It's a little town about 90 miles away from here. We hitchhiked all the way. Philip suddenly turns his head from the window. Marie is saying, so far we've been blessed with good luck. He breaks in before she's halfway through with her sentence. I hear you can get anything you want here. Did you hear that also? He squints his face and tries to shake off the awkwardness of what he has just said. Isn't that a fact, huh? Isn't that why I'm here, huh? Maybe make a lot of interesting friends, too, Philip remarks rather matter-of-factly. He looks thoughtful. He stops talking and turns to scan through the side window again. Oh, well, I'll say. Interesting. The way I like 'em. The driver grins and nods. I do it afterwards when I realize that's what... his eyes bulge. I guess I've been doing that. He honks his horn and accelerates as a car tries to cut him off. You see, he's gotten the hang of being in the city quite rapidly. His eyes meet Marie through the rear-view mirror. So you two are married, eh? He remarks with slight disbelief. The more he looks at them, the younger they seem. Yes, we are, says Marie, smiling coyly and blinking. She glances down at her hands. I'm not a married man myself. Can't say I mind it. As is his habit, he unconsciously changes the subject at this point. Say, where do you kids want to be dropped off? These words are the first Philip actually seems to hear. He excitedly replies, oh, you can just drop us off here. And he points to a nice-looking sidewalk cafe that happens to catch his eye. Whoa, we almost missed it, says the driver as he stomps on his brakes. The car is hit in the rear. The driver leaps out of the car and finds a bearded fellow bodily covering the rear windshield of his car. A bicycle with a bent front wheel is lying on the floor not far away. Marie and Philip turn around to see why it has suddenly gotten dark in the car, and they catch a good glimpse of a bearded face flattened against the windshield. Then they hear a loud, abrasive, God damn it! The driver is very angry. Marie and Philip sense this anger as they click open the back doors. Not much further away from this tableau is a giant theater, where some rehearsals are going on. It is the Belladonna Theater, somewhat old and worn, but tried and true, and one can't deny its magnificence. There is a sign on the marquee frame that says, plans are underway to renovate the Belladonna, thank God. The inside of the lobby is dark and ghostly. Only the stage is brightly lit with harsh white incandescent lights. There are some rehearsals going on. There are sheets of tinted acrylic lying about the stage, being peeled of their protective coverings by some stagehands. There is a sandy white pyramid about 10 feet tall, set center stage. Racing in and out of the scattered groups of people is a vibrant and ambitious girl, breathlessly asking everyone if they need any dancers. I don't know how much further I'm going to go on with this. I mean, alright, this is the first time I ever did this. I never did it before. Well, I don't know how well I'm following it. If you're following it, I'll go on. I'll do my best to catch up with what's going on myself. Alright, so we're in the theater now. It's like, basically, if we're in Dealadon, I mean, this is the Belladonna Theater, I mean, seats 6,000 people at least, maybe even 5,500. Racing in and out of the scattered groups of people is a vibrant, ambitious girl, breathlessly asking everyone if they need any dances. First of all, this position, I know I direct, variety as far as shots are concerned, but it's time to change position. Oh, yes. I was just dumb. Why am I throwing in these? I got a cookie here. I wanted to eat it. Freaking. All right. Lying about the stage. You know, we're on the. I don't even know where we're up to. You know, I'm reading this like I've lost track myself. I finished this cookie. Well, this is like Radio City. Maxwell House University. You know, is that university uptown, and Clairol Hotel is the one by the Paris Theater. We haven't gotten to Clairol yet. I don't know. Well, on this stage here, they're putting together a show. They have some idea with the acrylic they're going to use it as part of the presentation, which, well, during the time in between when Radio City was to be torn down. And, what am I doing? I have a television over there. Wearing a little tie. This is the boring part. I'm sorry. Every work of some varying length of time needs a lull like this. I mean, what has happened so far? Nothing. I was just getting in. I noticed it's hard to read for. I guess that's why Anthony Burgess didn't read his whole novel on record. I mean, it's kind of hard. Well, I've gotten through about 3 pages so far. Yeah, there was a sandy white pyramid about 10 feet tall set center stage. Racing in and out of the scattered groups of people is a vibrant, ambitious girl breathlessly asking everyone if they need any dancers. She obviously has her goals laid out for herself. Finally, after being ignored or rejected several times, someone walks up to her and asks her if she can dance. She replies, "Can I dance?" She crashes across the floor. Standing in the wings with his arms folded is Kevin Vargas. He shows a sincere momentary interest in the dancer, and then becomes distracted. Her machine gun clatter triggers the reminders of the many other overwhelming things he has on his mind. He walks onto the stage and claps his hands. He suggests it is time to call a lunch break. She had already been ignored by him, and now he was curious to see what she could do. He could see that she was getting somewhere, I guess, but he chose to ignore her. Everyone listens to Kevin when he suggests it's time to call lunch break because he is the principal director of the Dizozza Experience, a show whose gala performance will include the presentation of the Pyramid Awards. The Dizozza Experience is scheduled to open in about 3 weeks and will feature a potpourri of Dizzozzanian spectacles, including one devised personally by Kevin Vargas himself. It will be available for the appreciation of tourists and residents alike. The many employees scatter, some simply to eat bagged lunches in the wings. Kevin and the several other assistant directors, set designers, and principal performers leave together out the stage exit. They walk around the corner, choosing the sidewalk cafe that is the fewest paces from the theater. It is a favorite among theater people in that district. While walking with everyone else, Kevin remains very much within himself. He adjusts his Panama hat so he cannot see the sky. He straightens and tightens his satin maroon tie, not unlike, and tucks in his light blue silk shirt, not at all like the one which he also uses as a pajama top. And he wears it because he likes the way it feels. Yes, sure. That's why I wear silk shirts. I don't know about you. Around his beige cotton pants, let's see, he's tucking them in around his beige cotton pants. He unrolls his sleeves and puts on his dark blue double-breasted jacket. He is trying to be less disheveled for the sake of the restaurant they are heading for. As he tucks in his shirt, his eyes fall to his cotton pants, which, because they are made of such fine, well-pressed cotton, they flap impressively, and thoughts of his distinctive appearance relieve him from the dreary weather outside. His slight pleasure is distracted when he finds himself kicking at some pigeons. He inwardly curses them for merely hobbling away. He makes a tisk-tisk sound and asks, "Crystal, why don't they fly?" Crystal is at the other end of the group speaking to one of the assistant directors about the order of two of the numbers in the show. Crystal is about 4 people away speaking to someone else, but he turns to Kevin and says, "Kevin, in this world the pigeons refuse to fly." This is an inside joke between the two friends. The rest of the group has become busy admiring the ensuing argument between the driver and the cyclist. Yes, this interest lasts a few seconds and then everyone turns away. The group of people, totaling about 15 as they stream through the cafe doors, comment generally and collectively on how well the show is coming along, accrediting with reminiscent praise those whose minor successes occurred that morning. "Sarah should be pleased," someone concludes. At the tables, rather than immediately ordering some food as Kevin would have preferred, the conversation begins to dwell on a promising new career, coincidentally of the tap dancer whose clacking could still be heard as everyone was leaving the theater. She smiles strongly, eyes wide and earnestly nodding to what one of the assistant directors is saying in the way of advice. This interests Kevin not at all, so he looks at Crystal. They quietly excuse themselves and move to another room in the cafe. Henry, one of the assistant directors, informs everyone that Kevin and Crystal must have something private to talk over. Everyone looks briefly curious. Henry looks suspicious. "Didn't you like that girl?" asks Crystal to Kevin. "Yeah, except she had a big hollow smile. She made me feel sick." Crystal decides not to pursue this potentially unpleasant conversation. "I like this room better anyway," he says as they walk into the main dining room. Henry and the others have remained seated along the windows in the porch area. He can tell that Kevin feels he is in the position to decide who he wants to be with, and he is exercising that prerogative. Crystal is dressed with a light jacket, a collarless shirt, and a pair of black corduroy jeans, and generally looks very nice. He and Kevin glance briefly at the many little low wattage incandescent lights. I make such a big deal about these lights. I mean, it's ridiculous. These low wattage incandescent lights within shiny fixtures placed high in the walls, sparkling doubly because of the little rectangular mirrors on which they are mounted. I mean, I saw this once. All right. I don't even remember. Arnold's. I mean, it has a jerky place like that. No, it wasn't. I mean, the food wasn't so bad. It was a big cafeteria. This is the room I'm talking about. I think it's Arthur's or Arnold's or some A name with a nice matchbook to go with it. There are hundreds of these fixtures with the rectangular mirrors and the incandescent lights, and they give the room an elegant candlelight glow. The room itself is paneled in walnut. I don't know if it was really, but I mean, it would be nice. Aside from these features, it is much like a large cafeteria. It is at this prime time crowded and thick with an indecipherable hum. Everyone here is highly career-minded, so the hum is charged. Kevin agrees with Crystal. That's the first good line. Kevin agrees with Crystal. "This is a fantastic room," he says. The waiter appears and Crystal orders some kind of salad lover's delight, since the waiter has gone through all the trouble of verbally describing it to him in luxuriously explicit detail. It is basically a chef salad with stuff like tongue added to it. Kevin orders the first unfamiliar thing he spots on the menu, which, unfortunately for him, is sweetbread Francois. The waiter and the menus disappear. I've been to these places, I know all about this very continental style lunch menu. Crystal comments on... Oh, well, the waiter and the menus disappear first. Crystal comments on the dim. "Can you imagine a stereo speaker that would produce this aura of sound that surrounds us?" Kevin can't imagine such a speaker, so what might be called pleasant dining conversation begins. "Yes, Crystal, I believe state-of-the-art audio technology of today is capable of capturing the sounds one might hear in a crowded cafeteria lined with walnuts, such as the one we are in at this very moment, though of course only the select few may own such a system." The water glasses, I'm sure Kevin would have ordered such a system. He would make sure it matches paneling on his wall as well. The water glasses, which had been immediately emptied, are now suddenly refilled by a scurrying fellow. This elderly water boy spills a drop on the tablecloth and politely apologizes to Kevin, the one nearest to this dreadful accident. "Excuse me, ma'am." There is silence at the table as the event fades away and the smirks wear off Kevin and Crystal. They smile. However, Kevin decides to get his hair cut as soon as possible. He is rather frail and effeminate, but he is instinctively outraged and upset at being mistaken for a woman. Crystal begins to talk of how well the show is coming along, relatively speaking, and Kevin comments on those they had left in the other room and with whom they should have perhaps stayed. Most of them are good guys, like WMCA used to have. The gals, are good kids. Kevin likes everybody in general, but particularly prefers to be with Crystal. If one of the crew has something to tell Kevin, they will tell Crystal instead. At his most despondent, Kevin has looked to Crystal as his only representative of the outside world. Crystal enjoys this position, though he treats it like a chore. Kevin is about to get to his plans for his favorite topic, the musical number he has personally devised for the Deal-A-Don experience, when suddenly the waiter reappears. He is nervous, and he says, "I'm terribly sorry, sir, but the cook has informed me that the last plate of sweetbread Francois has been served a few moments ago. Perhaps you would like to choose from some of our many other appetizing selections." He opens the menu and holds it in front of Kevin, like a good waiter should do. Kevin looks up at the waiter with mournful eyes and nods as though his day has been ruined because of an arbitrarily selected dish that he half expected to dislike anyway. He begins scanning the menu again with rather blind eyes, as though he was sunbathing his face with the help of a reflector. Marie is an alert girl. From a few tables away where she is seated, she looks over toward Kevin. "Excuse me, sir. I couldn't help overhearing what your waiter just told you. I have ordered the very plate. I insist that you accept it." She thinly smiles. Kevin spots Philip seated facing Marie on one of those tight sofas that line the walls and seat so many. "My dear lady," he replies, "I cannot allow myself to deprive you of the entire dish. I insist that we share. I'm sure there'll be enough. Come dine with us." Chairs and tables are rearranged. Introductions are made. When Philip says hi, Kevin feels he might at last die in peace. Geographically speaking, Kevin and Marie sit next to each other, facing Philip. Crystal sits to the side. He is mainly observing Kevin. Kevin thinks rather excitedly that he cannot look at Philip without suffering an emotional breakdown. We'll say the camera. So, of course, I have to read this, so I can't begin to act with my eyes. He whistles softly and shakes his head. Like he's very impressed with this. He devotes his external attentions to Marie and the meal he almost didn't have. See how she indulges herself in a pampering partial love, just as I indulge myself in these novelist speculations. This is a quote to the side here. "How is it?" Marie shrugs. "I don't know." Kevin says, "How is it?" I don't know. I never had it before." "Neither did I. I wonder what it is. My God, I do this. I feel like all these, like there's a great deal of tension, I guess, that mounts up over the amount of time that I've just been sitting here. Oh my God. I wish somebody was talking to the camera. Why talk to one when you can talk to millions? Chairs and tables are rearranged. What the hell? How is it? Marie shrugs. "I don't know. I never had it before." Oh. "Neither did I. I wonder what it is." Marie takes a piece out of her mouth and stretches it. "I can't imagine what it is. I'm sure it isn't what I expected." Crystal tries to suppress a laugh. "I think I know what it is." He cheerfully lifts the nickel-silver pourer to a high altitude and pours some dressing on his salad. Oh my God, it's like, I mean, why? I can imagine what newscasters go through, if they even know what they're saying. Oh. Well, I don't know what to tell you, but this feels fairly good. I guess it's like one of those cartoon characters just found. Oh, the exact spot where it feels so good. Crystal tries to suppress a laugh. "I think I know what it is." He cheerfully lifts the nickel-silver pourer to a high altitude and pours some lumpy dressing on his salad. Philip is repulsed, so he twists his delicate features. Marie pats his hand. "Philip, it really isn't so bad." She looks back down at her plate and makes a queasy face. Kevin attempts to speak to Philip, perhaps to say something consoling. He nearly does. He even raises his eyebrows. Instead, he orders a glass of wine from a nearby waiter. Crystal has known Kevin long enough to assume what is on Kevin's mind. Kevin is indulging in novelist speculations. Crystal decides to direct these speculations onto a real path. Don't you think Philip here would look great in Sarah's office, he suggests. Kevin blinks his eyes a few times and pretends to seriously consider the question's pros and cons, as if he could actually imagine either at the time. Finally, he nods, hesitantly at first, and then with a degree of conviction. Yes, I think yes, he is just the type. Marie blinks as well and places her fork down on the table. She asks who this Sarah might be, folding her hands obediently on the table. Kevin replies indirectly with some words carefully chosen. Sarah is both artist and patron of the arts. He stops and begins to reflect on what he has just said. He is also a teacher of the highest magnitude, for he can make the good bad, the bad good, the mediocre, perhaps, great. His index finger dances to the erratic rhythm of the words, comes to rest on the table. Anyway, he concludes, forgetting what he has previously said, he certainly has been right a lot lately. As he finishes making his point, his eyes rest on Philip. Crystal smiles at what Kevin has said. He is basically in agreement, but he knows that it takes a familiarity with Sarah to truly understand what Kevin has said. I hope we can join in this familiarity. Eventually we will. Philip, still disturbed by the sweetbread dish, looks especially confused by the suddenness and meaning of Kevin's brief discourse. His mouth opens. Philip looks so beautiful to Kevin that not only does Kevin forget the bulk of what he has just said, but he begins to consider his own appearance and wonders if he looks a little too obviously spellbound. He also hopes he does not present an unattractive picture to Philip. He wishes for a mirror and sees only the... Oh, I'm going to make a reference to those damn lights up there. He wishes for a mirror and sees only the ones way up on the walls, He scratches at the back of his neck despite the lack of an itch. Lacking the security of a glance of his own reflection. God, I can't believe how tight. I mean, the back. Oh my God, it's like... I think I will just... There's a little comedy here about how I can do this. I'm going to be masturbating, so, right? I mean, that's... I'm sorry that I said that for anybody's sake who is perhaps offended, because I so hate to offend, but anyway, it's similar since I'm just sitting here alone in this little study with a camera pointed at me, massaging myself and feeling like, oh my God, it feels great. He also hopes he does not present an unattractive picture to Philip. He wishes for a mirror and sees only the ones, Yeah. Well, lacking the security of a glance at his own reflection, he concentrates on being refined. He delicately reaches for his newly arrived wine and cautiously takes a sip. Satisfied, he returns the thin-necked glass to its place on the table, and is about to continue eating his food with an equal amount of delicacy and refinement, when it suddenly occurs to him that Marie was able to stretch this food. He picks a piece out of his dish and begins to examine it. All eyes rest expectantly on Kevin. Suddenly his face lights up. "Oh, I know what it is," Crystal said. "That's right, Kevin, it's stomach lining. Now, why don't you put it back on the plate and stop playing with your food?" Kevin sighs. "Well, Marie, thank you for offering it, but I'm sorry. I never eat things that stretch. Maybe we can share our dish some other time." He's tired of his convoluted and uncomfortable behavior. He decides to abandon it for the topic of a few moments ago, which was Sarah. Ah, yes, that Sarah is an interesting man. He's basically our boss. He's the head artistic consultant of the agency we're working for. Unfortunately for Marie and Philip, they had begun to feel sympathetically convoluted themselves, since, though they have no way of knowing for sure, they have a hunch that this Kevin is a man of some importance. Marie lights up at the concrete evidence supplied by the word agency. She is about to put in a few words hastily connected about Philip, but a calmer Kevin chooses to put a question to the beautiful Philip at this time, in an effort to make conversation. It is not a deep question, nor is it intended as a personal question. Say, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name." "Philip," says Crystal. "Yes, Philip. Philip, you don't ride a bicycle in the city, do you?" Philip is unsure if he should answer such a question. He closes his mouth. Kevin concludes his rhetorical question with some sound advice. I know it's economical and I admire people who do it, but if you ride around here you should be especially careful. Well, there was a bicycle accident just outside the cafe. Poor guy ran into a car. They were having a terrible argument. Philip frowns and moans. Oh, I feel so bad. Kevin becomes disturbed that his attempt at pleasant dining conversation should have had so negative an effect. He puts his hand over his mouth and decides that Philip must be extremely sensitive. These things happen, he says reassuringly. I know arguments are a terrible thing, but sometimes, unavoidably of course, they are a great way to, He scorns Philip's sensitivity by referring to arguments rather than accidents. Marie has been suffering extreme disbelief at the new direction taken by the conversation, especially when she was just about to put in a plug for Philip. She must first deal with the confusion at hand. I understand how you feel, Philip. Excuse us, Kevin. Crystal, we have a terrible confession to make. That poor man gave us a ride. When the accident happened, we got scared and jumped out of the car and ran into this cafe. She stares beyond Crystal and Philip at the rest of the cafe. Eek! Here he comes now. Hide, Philip. Her napkin goes flying into the air. Crystal had been well entertained up to this point. Suddenly he has been confused himself. As he realizes out loud, "Oh, you mean the guy in the car?" Marie scrambles under the table, with just enough flourish to attract the driver's attention. Standing by the desk at the entrance to the main dining room, his index finger, the driver's index finger, rings an imaginary doorbell. He soundlessly exclaims, "Ah!" and promptly walks to the table and pulls up a chair. "May I?" he asks, about to sit down anyway. Kevin and Crystal shrug and say sure. Kevin even graciously offers an exaggerated sweeping hand gesture. Another place is set for the driver. Without bothering to consider other more exotic alternatives, he orders a turkey sandwich on rye with lettuce and tomatoes. Phew, I'm hungry as a horse. Decided I'd join you kids for a bite. Hadn't figured you'd be meeting someone, though. He glances quizzically at Kevin and Crystal. They glance cordially back at him. "Oh, sir, we're so sorry," says Marie, truly repentant as she seats herself back on the chair. Philip has his head on the table. The driver had walked into the cafe intending to be angry and to give Philip and Marie a substantial piece of his mind. But now he is deciding against it. He thinks, these kids are too inherently irresponsible for me to make any impression. "I understand," he says aloud. "You panicked. These things happen." His head tilts as he stares at the tablecloth and remembers the event. With a blink, he becomes animated. "Well, nothing like a good argument to wake up my appetite. I found a parking spot, so I thought I'd drop in and join you kids for a bite." He glances again at Kevin and Crystal. "Didn't figure you'd be meeting someone, though." He looks at Marie expectantly and a little uncomfortably. Kevin and Crystal look at each other with suspicion. "A parking spot?" "Oh, yes, of course," says Marie. Oh, yes, of course," says Marie, taking the hint of the driver. "Forgive us. This is Kevin and his friend, I'm sorry, what was your name again? Crystal, is that it? What an odd name." The driver's face signals recognition. With mounting excitement, he says, "Wait a minute. Crystal? Kevin? Why, I feel I'm just another guest on a talk show. I'm sitting with Kevin Vargas and his notoriously good friend, Crystal. Wait till I tell the relatives." Marie is taken aback. "You know these people?" The driver nods repeatedly. "Marie, you've never seen a film by Kevin Vargas? Come on, where have you been? They're playing all over the place out west. We happen to be sitting next to a very famous filmmaker." Philip lifts his head from the table. Marie is about to burst with something to say. "Yes, among other things, I have been a filmmaker," says Kevin, "though I'm more inclined to consider myself a simple poet," he adds with a twinge of sarcasm. Marie finally says, "You know, Philip here is interested in acting. Do you suppose you could do anything for him?" "Well, listen, Marie," begins Kevin. "If I were you, I would clean Philip up a bit and enroll him in some acting workshops in the evening, and during the day stick him in Sarah's office, and then just wait a little while. Because I can tell by the way he looks." The driver is still nodding in amazement as his sandwich arrives. Having heard what Marie just asked, he feels he has the responsibility to interrupt Kevin's response. "Oh, you don't know who you're asking. I've seen the films of these guys playing out west." He puts his eyes. "They're strange." He turns to Kevin. "I've always wanted to tell you. Boy, you guys are strange." "Yes, well, if you don't mind, we'll be going now." Kevin puts his napkin on the table. Crystal simply stares at the driver with pity mixed with contempt. He is also slightly disinterested by the turn of the events, since they are predictable to him. Next, the driver will bring up Sewell, he thinks. The driver takes a big bite of his sandwich and asks, "Where's Sewell, huh?" Kevin feels torment. "Yeah, well, Sewell is away right now. Come on, Crystal, find the waiter." Crystal looks in all directions as if he was suddenly placed in a museum. "Oh, that's a shame," the driver chews as he speaks. "Give him my regards, will you?" His manner is getting more abrasive. He has found a source in which to redirect his anger from the accident. Waiter! A waiter has been beckoned to the table. Kevin stands next to him and says, "I just want to get out of here. We're staying at the Clairol. Could you mind billing us there?" "Sir, you'll have to speak to the manager." The driver bends his hand at the wrist and says, "I just want to get out of here." "I'm Kevin Vargas," says, ignoring the driver now. "All right, Kevin, go speak to the manager. I'm sure he'll be able to do something for you. Don't worry about it." He and Kevin start to walk away. Crystal says so long to everyone, saying, "See you around, nice meeting you," etc. Marie asks helplessly, "You're staying at the Clairol?" Crystal says, "Yes, in a day or two. You can look me up there if you want." Marie looks at Kevin walking away with the waiter. The waiter is asking, "How did you like the sweetbread?" Kevin answers with self-pity and resentment, "How was I supposed to know it was stomach lining?" Marie is very frustrated, but she decides to let Kevin and Crystal go. She supposes she has gotten enough information and advice for now. She thanks Crystal for his offer and says goodbye to him. Philip raises his hand in a gesture of farewell. The driver continues to eat his sandwich with a great deal of satisfaction. There is silence at the table as he gobbles the last bit. The silence is intensified since the cafe traffic has diminished greatly during their meal, no fault of theirs. The waiter, noticing that the driver has finished eating, appears. Dessert menus? Am I still in the picture when I go? Yeah, I guess. Marie exasperatedly looks at the driver. He has a satisfied look on his face as he stifles a burp. He doesn't show any active signs of wanting dessert. Marie says, "Check, please." "I'll have a toothpick," adds the driver. Marie pulls out $100 bill from inside her shirt. The driver notices this and says, "How about treating me to lunch, kids? It's the least you could do, eh? I'd say I deserved it." "Sure," says Marie without much consideration. She decides to bring up the bicycle accident. "Gee, what are you going to do about that bicycle accident?" Her face is deadpan. The driver is in a lively mood again. "Oh, nothing. That guy's all right. That happens to him all the time. He was telling me about the time he went splat back flat end. He was telling me about the time he went splat into the flat back end of a truck. You can tell I want to write lyrics out of parts. Besides, I was the one who was hit in the rear. I should be the one to claim damages." The waiter returns with the check and delicately informs Philip and Marie, "Mr. Vargas has taken care of you." He hands the check to the driver. Marie raises her eyes to the ceiling and takes the check out of the waiter's hands. She looks at it and hands the waiter the check and the $100 bill. The waiter greets the bill with some surprise. He almost disgustedly says, "Cash?" Marie nods and says, "Yes." Philip has been looking at the ceiling all the while. Half hour passes, much to everyone's exasperation and fright. Philip and Marie are falling apart. They let out little high-pitched sighs and moans. The driver nervously picks his teeth and stares at the tablecloth. The waiter returns. "I'm sorry, the cashier has informed me not to accept this bill." What's the matter? Is it no good?" Philip asks with dread. The waiter simply and non-committedly replies, "I'm sorry. I've simply been instructed by the cashier and the manager not to accept this bill. If you want me to, I will call the manager." The driver hastily recommends that the manager not be called. He hands the waiter a $10 bill. He glances at Marie and Philip as if they were worse than two total strangers, and then leaves the cafe with some haste. By the way, the driver did indeed park illegally. He failed to notice several signs with warnings and arrows pointed in both directions. However, his car was neither towed nor ticketed. Next time, perhaps, he will not be this lucky. Philip and Marie nod in all directions as they walk slowly out of the cafe. They receive quizzical glances from all sides, especially from the cashier. As they pass through the exit doors, they start to run madly. They continue running about 10 blocks into a nearby park. This is the giant park in the middle of the city, filled with trees, grass, rocks, and the like. As they become surrounded by these references to nature, Philip and Marie slow down and finally start to plod slowly along a pleasant little trail. Philip is impressed by the large park. He opens his eyes a little extra to take it all in. Marie still has Kevin on her mind. She says, "He was always so flustered, I could barely get in a word about you. Oh well, he's staying at the Clairol. We'll just stay there too." She winks at Philip. "But Marie, what about our money? You saw what happened at the cafe." Marie pulls out their wad of assorted bills and pages through them. They all are of large denominations. She says, "We must have given him a really old one." Finally she comes across one that is under 60 years old. "We'll use this one first. Come on. We'll have to look up this Mr. Sarro as well." They start to walk with more speed and determination. The day has darkened considerably as it wanes.